Ooh. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Let's do this. So, I am back with some more tea today. Before we get started, I wanted to show you guys my new mug. Look at her. Look how cute she is. It's like a little cat and the little paws for it to stand on. And here's the best part, the back. It says don't stress me out. It says me out. Anyone's wondering, which probably no one is, but I'm gonna tell you guys anyway. I got this mug from a place called Kitchen Stuff Plus. So from the name, you can probably guess they sell a lot of things like mugs and plates. I found a whole wall. It was literally a wall full of mugs. Like, there was one that looked like a stack of donuts. There was another that was like a Harry Potter cat, and there was an octopus, I think. There was one shaped like a pug wearing a scarf and a winter hat. It was the cutest thing I've ever seen, and they were all $7. I went in and I was like, I obviously wanted to get one for myself, but then I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna get one for my sister as well. So I saw this one and I was like, she would love this cat one. I can see her drinking hot cocoa from this. And I was looking at ones that I wanted to get for myself and was thinking about the Harry Potter cat one. I don't think it was a Harry Potter cat. It was just wearing like a red scarf and it had like round glasses, and I was like, Harry Potter cat, there we go. I figured I'd be cute and get matching mugs for myself and my sister, and I would bring this to my dorm and my sister would keep hers here obviously, and it'd be a cute present. But really, I was just like, I want this mug too. Anyway, so that's my story. The tea I'm drinking today, there's also a story behind that. This is called ice wine black tea, I think. I've never tried this before. It's really weird. I thought it was just normal black tea, but it's not apparently. So I read the package and it said something about grapes from like icy places in Canada, and we have a lot of those. So I was like, all right, ice wine. I get where that comes from now. I haven't really tried it yet, but like the smell is really distinct. It doesn't smell like black tea. If there are any tea drinkers watching this, you'll know that black tea has a very like distinct smell. It smells like grapey, candy grapes kind of. It smells a lot like Fruit Gushers, except the purple kind. So that's what it smells like. I haven't really taken a sip, but I'm going to. Okay, that's interesting. The Fruit Gusher smell, I can definitely taste it. Like the kind of grapey flavor to it, I can definitely taste it. This is some good stuff. I would recommend this tea. Anyways, on to today's video. It's not a shocky video if I don't spend like 5 minutes talking about tea in the beginning. So today's tea, the kind that you're not going to be drinking, is about the movie of the year, the highest grossing film of all time. I can say that now. And no, it is not Avatar. It is Avengers Endgame. You know it. I have seen this movie twice in theaters, and I've cried both times excessively. Anyways, so I've got a lot of feelings about this movie. A lot of feelings. A lot. One thing that I really did not like is the entire time travel. Okay. The whole thing with the timeline, it just doesn't make sense to me. When they were in the 2012 timeline, we have Professor Hulk. He goes to see the Ancient One to get the Time Stone, and she kind of explains the entire logic behind time travel, right? So she says that if Professor Hulk takes the stone from that timeline, he takes it to his own timeline, then his future would now be different. But the original timeline, which he took the stone from, would still go on as it was, which I was like, okay, that makes sense. So Steve, after like Tony dies and they win, yada yada, is tasked with returning the stones to like where they got them from. He zooms off and they see this old man sitting on this bench, and they're like, they find out that it's Steve, and we find out that Steve traveled back in time and he kind of just stayed there. According to Marvel, time travel basically works when if I travel from my current timeline to the past, then from that point, so let's say I travel back in time 10 years to 2009, so there would be two Shakis in 2009. My future from that point would be different to this original timeline starting from this current moment in time. So this timeline would go as it is, just missing me in it. And the other timeline would have 2 Shakis in it. That's how I understand time travel to work from Marvel's explanation of it. But Steve goes back in time to be with Peggy. So he's not in the MCU like original timeline now where everything has happened. He's in another timeline, right? With his own kind of alternate dimension almost, with his own events happening, right? And so there's 2 Steves there. There's one that's in the ice and there's one who's now alive with Peggy from 2023. I don't understand how he shows up in his original timeline as an old man, because there's no Steve in this timeline anymore. He just doesn't exist there. He has his own timeline now. He shouldn't be in this timeline. I don't understand. The writers made it worse. And then they said that during Peggy's funeral, there was an old Steve sitting in the pew somewhere. He was just present during all the events of the 22 movies that we've seen so far in the Marvel Cinematic Universe since the very beginning. So there's 2 Steves. There's 2 Steves. There's no 2 timelines. There's just one with 2 Steves in it now. What? The writers also said Peggy's husband is actually Steve. So the one that she talks about, I think in The Winter Soldier, when Steve goes to the Smithsonian and he goes to his exhibit, and Peggy kind of talks about her own life.
He saved over 1,000 men, including the man who would become my husband, as it turned out. Even after he died, Steve was still changing my life.
Another thing that really confused me is in The Winter Soldier. We have Steve visiting a very, very old and ill Peggy, and you see pictures beside her bedside of her family that, like, and her life that she built for herself after Steve died. She tells him to move on. She tells Steve to move on.
All we can do is our best, and sometimes the best that we can do is to start over.
And then later on in Avengers Age of Ultron, at the very end, we have Steve. He's talking to Tony. He asks Steve, "You all right?" And Steve says, "I'm home." He says something about the guy who went into the ice. He wanted family and stability and all of that. And the guy who came out doesn't really want that anymore. Anyways, I'll insert the clip right here so you can see that for yourselves.
I don't know. Family, stability. Guy who wanted all that went in the ice 75 years ago. I think someone else came out. You all right? I'm home.
It's just so frustrating. So that's the first thing. The whole timeline debacle is just a mess. And I think the writers, every time they try to explain it more, they kind of just dig themselves deeper into this hole. And the time travel thing, I just don't get how it works at all. Moving on from that, Steve, the entire like plot of every single movie that Steve Rogers is in is him trying to find his best friend, Bucky Barnes. Captain America, the Winter Soldier. So the Winter Soldier, who we later realized as Bucky Barnes, at the very end, when they have their big fight, their like one-on-one showdown, and Steve just gives up. The first time in all of the movies we've seen him in so far, he gives up the fight. He's just like, okay, I'm not gonna fight you anymore. And he says very chilling words, quote from the first Avengers, "I'm with you till the end of the line."
Because I'm with you to the end of the line.
Then this third Captain America movie, we have basically more of Steve trying to find Bucky. He literally becomes a fugitive to protect his best friend. At the very end, right, when they finally have a chance to like be together and like, you know, have their happy ending as bros would, I guess, Steve just decides to like peace out. Apparently, "I'm with you till the end of the line" means I'm with you till I can go and get laid in the 50s. It was very out of character for Steve to do something like that. In Captain America Civil War, there's this conversation that Steve has with Tony in the conference room where Tony tries to get him to sign the Accords.
This situation pointed south. I can't ignore it. Sometimes I wish I could.
No, you don't.
basically that happens, and yet Steve still goes back in time when Bucky has been taken by Hydra and is currently being tortured for years, for decades. Except now Steve is well and alive. He's with Peggy. He's living out his dreams. Except there's a Bucky in that timeline who's still with Hydra being tortured, like while Steve is living his life. I just don't understand how the man that could say that whenever he sees a situation pointed south, he can't ignore it. He can just sit there and live out his life while his best friend, the very best friend that he's fought in every single one of his solo movies, he's fought to protect. I don't see how Steve can just abandon him like that. The next thing is I wanted to kind of go over Tony's death. It's a very sensitive topic. So we've got, I'm wearing the merch today. Okay. So Tony's death, at first I was okay with it actually, because I was like, okay, this makes sense, because his entire story arc is that, you know, he goes from this man who's kind of selfish. He's a genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. He seems to only care about himself. He doesn't have very much respect for others. But his whole character arc is that he learns how to, you know, stand up for others and use his abilities and his, well, not his powers, but his smarts to protect those who can't protect themselves. At the end of the first Avengers movie, we see Tony flying the nuke into outer space, and he's fully prepared to die, and like we all think he's gonna die, and he doesn't. It's a pretty big development going from Tony Stark, the CEO of Stark Industries, from the first Iron Man movie in the beginning to his whole like journey, like self-discovery. He's kind of like this very heroic individual. Basically, I thought his death made sense because it was kind of like the final, like the last triumph of Tony Stark, and it was kind of necessary, I thought, because he was the one who predicted this to happen. And even when everyone told him, when Steve told him that if we lose, we'll lose together, and yet Tony was the only one with enough foresight to predict that something would happen like this and that they wouldn't be prepared for it. And it was kind of, I thought, personally, I thought it was necessary for him to be the one who like kind of ended it all. What threw me was like the 5 years later part, and we get Tony and we see that he's had a kid and he has a family with Pepper now, and he's got the life that he's kind of always wanted. And also that, like from the first Iron Man movie, when he's having that conversation with Yinsen, who says you have everything and yet nothing, because Tony doesn't really have a family at that point in time. He's just living for himself. But in Endgame, like after the 5 years, we see that he's definitely not living for himself anymore. He's got a family. And after that, it just didn't make sense to me for him to have died anymore, just thinking about that. It just kind of felt like they gave him a family so that he has more at stake. But I just wish that Tony could have gotten a happy ending. I think something that would have been a lot more powerful and a really nice way to honor like all of the superheroes would be to have something that happened in Guardians of the Galaxy, the first movie, where they all kind of join hands to harness the power of the Power Stone. They all survive it, but they all like harness it as well. That would have been a really cool way to have that play out at the very end in Endgame, because they have enough superheroes to do that. They definitely have enough. I thought that was really powerful. I really love that scene. Like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, it would have been a nice way to sum it all up and like, you know, tie it up with a neat bow. I think that's pretty much it. That's all the tea that I have on Endgame. Leave a comment down below if you have tea of your own. Make sure to subscribe, leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, or if you like hearing me rant about movies and things. Yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching. Sorry, I was just Googling who was the Sorcerer Supreme before Doctor Strange, because I was like, I knew her name, but I was like, okay. So, the Ancient One, / Bruce Banner / Hulk / Professor Hulk. And she kind of like, she does the thing that